6 months ago, Warren came to us. He said the Boks were at it again. Spying. Scheming. Decoding line-out calls with their military-grade brains and farm boy charm. Said he had evidence. Said it was serious. So I asked him, what kind of evidence, Warren? Binoculars? Drones? Secret microphones in the Lions team room? He said they rented a house in Hermanus overlooking the training field. He said Rassie was on the pitch, disguised as a water boy, holding a piece of paper. And when they zoomed in, it had their moves, their calls, their secrets. Look at Lukhanyo Am, he said. That hit on Elliot Daly. That wasn't instinct. That was intel. It smelled like a scandal. We had no choice. We had to investigate. Costs be damned. So we called in the Rugby Fixer, Harry Jones, relentless, unbought, unhinged. This is his bombshell report, exclusive to the Lekker Rugby Pod.
Welcome to this special emergency podcast episode of the Lekker Rugby Pod, directly from the head office of World Rugby. And in my office is Harry Jones, famous Rugby Fixer, investigative reporter. Despite my cunning disguise, I'm sure you all know that I am actually Bill Beaumont, the chairman, or ex-chairman, people don't know that even, of World Rugby. So Harry, you're in my office today to report back on the spurious allegations that you and I started investigating 6 months ago about the Springboks allegedly spying on the Lions in 2021. What dirt have you dug up for us on these dastardly South Africans?
Yeah, good morning, Sir William Beaumont, or as I like to call you now, Billy. I trust that your elbow patches and your soft loafers and your cranberry chinos are nice, are very luxurious today in your house. And yeah, thank you very much for hiring me for this incredible investigation. It means a lot to me and my family. It might put my daughter through college, actually. And so I'm really enjoying the idea that you had. I remember you saying to me, Harry, and you said very earnestly, we have to avoid the witch hunt and we have to avoid the whitewash. When Warren Gatland came to you 6 months ago with these same allegations that we've seen in the Telegraph, and you said, I really want to know, and you said, you reminded me that the Tom Curry thing, that Witkan thing was seen as a whitewash by the brothers Vindaloo, the Curry brothers, Nando Tom and Nando Ben, who experienced extraordinarily anti-white privilege in the West Windlands, in their private schools that they grew up in England. So, it was very sad for them. And then it was perceived by the Safas as throwing the baby out with the bathwater in Bethlehem for Bongi. It was a bit of a whitewash. And so we decided, you and I, to be very thorough. Thank you very much for entrusting me with an extraordinary budget. In the entirety of the Sevens budget, basically, you gave over to our investigation. And that allowed us, Billy, to be, very thorough. We hired a mini submarine, actually. We put it out in the bay off the coast to see if maybe there was some sort of fake artificial whale out there that maybe Rassie is so dastardly in how he was using seismic waves or something. But we kind of ruled that out after a week. But it was quite fun being out there. And also we wondered about the hot air from Warren Gatland, that maybe it had changed, all that whole area. There's an abattoir in Hermanus. There's the butchery, the ostrich egg hatchery, the Biltong Purity Lab, and a bed and breakfast full of overpriced Germans. And, just that hot air, we wondered if that had changed the climate or something. And in the end, we ruled that out. There was a lot of digital nomads from New York City, too, in Hermanus. And, we tried to exhume the stomachs of all the dead animals in that area and find out there's a lot of extraordinary amount of ridgebacks in that area, too. So it was quite scary for some of our investigators. But listen, we actually really tried to understand the hills around the Hoërskool of Hermanus.
Hoërskool. Please, don't say Hoërskool. There's a huge difference in those two words, please. Hoërskool.
Hoërskool. And Warren Gatland and his fellows had actually didn't even say Hermanus. They said his Manus because they were trying to be a little bit anti-woke. And, we couldn't, the problem, Billy, is we couldn't find any houses that were overlooking. And it's not that hard, actually. You just actually stand on the field and you look around, although we took 6 weeks to do this investigation. We look around and there's absolutely no houses at all. But we didn't. We heard you say that no whitewash, no witch hunt. So we really tried to go around to every structure. We thought maybe he didn't understand what a house looks like in Hermanus.
Did you look for tree houses?
Yeah, yeah, we look for everything. And we tried to do lines of sight, So where exactly at that moment in time in the practice where Dan Bigger avoided Robbie Henshaw on the skip pass to Elliot Daly, or maybe it was Chris Harris because they kept changing 13s. Where exactly were they when they were doing that, and what did they call it, and how far away could you be on a hill house looking at that practice field to hear whatever weird code name they were going to use for that exact moment when there was a skip pass? And I'm sorry, but we came up empty. But we did try to find maybe sort of logic. We know you like logic, about scrums and viewership and so forth. So we found that Dan Bigger threw 8,964 passes in his career. There were 3.56% of them that were skip passes. So we had an analyst that was hired just to do that research, Billy. Mm-hmm. And so 320 skips in his entire career. The skippy, got hit on about 25% of those hard, 10% really hard, and then 3% got hit like Lukhanyo Am hit Elliot Daly. So just got moored. And so we thought, okay, we're looking for the 3%er. And then we decided that was kind of like a red herring. And we decided it doesn't really matter because unless someone saw that 3% moor hit on Daly after Dan Bigger said that thing he was supposed to say, and we have it in a filmable range in Hermanus from a structure that could be viewed as a house, it doesn't really matter. And so I said to the team after about a month of work, good places to eat there too in Hermanus, by the way, we just have to know what was in Lukhanyo Am's head. That's really where this investigation leads, because unless Lucky knew, or Lucky 13, he's a 13, do I hit a 13 or should I go try to hit the 10? Maybe should I jump over the 13 and hit Duhan van der Merwe, who's coming around on a loop move? It doesn't really matter. My team said, no, Harry, we still want to talk to all the people that are in the structures all around in the hills. And I said, that sounds good. So we were being thorough. It's difficult to know also what the referee was going to say on the day about the ball and all tackle. Those can be risky. If Lukhanyo Am had gone maybe even a millimeter higher, then maybe he's a red card, So we don't know, because it's very, very, very difficult to know what Nick was going to do. But we did come back we talked to everyone around. We talked to a guy named Choppy, a guy named Flippy, Stocky, also a guy named Reginald Stoke Holmes, who said he knows you, claimed to be a distant relative of yours. And then, we actually went, from place to place to place. And I wanted to apologize to you, Billy, for the budget that we had to also kind of blow really quickly. It was blown basically in the first day. We had trilingual investigators, and we tried to understand that everyone in Hermanus was very interested in the Lions. They were probably the biggest spenders in that town's history. You have all these young guys and all the trainers and psychologists and psychiatrists, none of whom would ever leak any plans, by the way, Billy. We found that as truth. Nobody would ever tell anyone anything, right? Even on beers, they were just really tight-lipped. And they were just walking around, discovering things. And we had to train the team, of course, to do this investigation on your budget. But there was one man that really baffled our investigators, because he kept saying, no, y'all. And I kept telling the guys, no. So listen, here's the thing. You've got to take the number of no's and then multiply it by the yaws. And then you have to factor in when it starts with yaw or no or yaw. And then you get your answer. So after the first few days, people were really confused because there was so many yaws and no's and they didn't know what to do. There was one guy actually in Hermanus that set the world record for the number of times he said, yaw, no, yaw. And, we had to coach the investigators about how you end. And that ending cannot be on an uplift like no, yaw. It has to be no, yaw. And so in the end, we decided to finally take our investigators out and go out and talk to everyone. And listen, there was a a problem with the investigation as well, because we couldn't talk to all the people, the protagonists, very easily. Warren didn't want to talk to us. Rassie didn't want to talk to us. Lukhanyo wasn't very eager to talk about us. And Elliot Daly was like, hell no. I want to blot that out of my memory forever. That was the worst hit in my life. It was a banana split pork chop dragonfly hit. And it is really one of those hits where it makes the blitz defense, famous. So anyway, there was a guy on the outskirts. He owns a cafe, and he said it was a cafe up on the hills. And he was talking about that he maybe heard a guy say that the Boks did like to hit centers with centers. Midfielders did try to hit midfielders. And so, we followed that one down for a while. Then we found that there was a skate park up there, I think it's called the Hermanus skate park. But there was no line of sight because they dug into the hill. And so all the skateboarders are going down in there. But they do sell some cozy gloves, chic scarves, and snug jackets and playful beanies at that place. So we stocked up on those for you, Billy. And also there's a really good service that they do there for like tuindienste, like actually garden work. And that was cool too, because that same guy was married to the guy who he cuts the grass at the high school. So everything was starting to be connected. We put a big thing on the wall like you see at FBI, CIA. We connected everyone and actually everyone was connected. And we found that there was not one person in Hermanus that didn't know almost everyone else in Hermanus. There were brothers of this guy at the school, but then they hate each other. And so it was really complicated. By the way, there's a kind of a tarred road that leads up to the top of the mountain range there at the beginning of Hermanus. To get there and sort of go to Cape Town, you have to go up you go past the Spar, and then I think there's another little a country store out there. And so we visited with those guys, but they couldn't really see the high school either. So we're kind of trapped with this one little tiny sort of corner in the road. I think it was the corner of Fairway and another road. And that's where we thought maybe there could be a house that was rented. There was a big mansion there. I go talk to that guy and I said, could I rent your house right now? And he just laughed at me and said, come on, this is not what we do here. No one rents a house. So, in the end, there was one kind of bed and breakfast spa place. They said Warren would go there for lots of massages, and Selkirk House. And very nice, very, very nice, top class. And in the end, they said, Warren was here all the time. The only guy that really rented a house in the hills was actually Warren himself. And maybe he was the one who was looking at the practice. And maybe he was the one who saw Dan Biggar suddenly skip Robbie Henshaw and go to Elliot Daly. And maybe he was thinking, that's a good move. Also, Rassie, of course, was alleged to have this piece of paper, where he had the directives, the code names. But when we actually did all the transliteration and the translation, and then we normalized it for, colloquial speech, all it said was f them up. And it just said that like 7 times. And we decided that was very much in keeping with the plan for the Lions series. So finally, we wanted to make sure that we covered everything. Is there anything you were curious about so far, Billy, that I haven't covered? Because then I'm going to tell you about my interviews with Lukhanyo Am, who we did get in the end.
A couple of things jumped out at me. Firstly, the submarine, was that really necessary? Sevens had to go to the Dogs this year because you had to go rent a submarine. I think you misunderstood maybe the mission. It's not whales watching like Walvis. It's Wales, like Wales, the rugby team. I'm not sure if you understood that correctly. So, okay, but let's leave that there for now. The other thing that I heard, there was a bit of a rumor, a request for budget increase and allowances, the reason they went indoors because they ran out of money for suntan lotion. So they had to go indoors because they couldn't do that anymore. But the pharmacists must have made a fortune on that, didn't they?
Now, listen, the town was very, very happy with the Lions. They said basically it kept it afloat. There was a lot of arguments. You had Alan Wynne-Jones arguing a lot with Maro Itoje about whether this was indeed the tip of the African continent and whether this was where the oceans collide. Maro Itoje said, no, it was actually off Cape Point, and that's a misnomer. Alan Wynne-Jones said, no, the ocean's just one ocean anyway. There's no different oceans. And then who was it again? I think it was Stuart Hogg, nice guy, apparently. He was saying, that it's the currents, that you have, counterclockwise and clockwise. That's how he's always conducted his dating relationships as well. And we went through all that. And Warren Gatland, curiously, was very agnostic about this ocean controversy. They all liked the whales, and they thought it was funny to call the whales different names that were like the Springbok players, very childish, and so that's part of the miscommunication as well. On the submarine, we just wanted to make sure, Billy, that we didn't miss any thread, because in the Vindaloo investigation, there was a lot of people saying, but you didn't look hard enough about Bongi, and you didn't look about the suffering of Tom Curry's childhood, where he was so underprivileged, and the books he had to carry, to his private driver, whereas Bongi, how far he had to walk. And so we wanted to make sure it was equal. And so we thought, the most important thing about Hermanus and why they could stay at that resort, Arabella, and be in that lap of luxury is all about the ocean. And so maybe that's where there was some problem we had to uncover. So we dug hard, we did not let your boys off easy. I know that you're famous, Billy, for the British Lions. And so your feelings must have been entirely neutral in this investigation. And so, we tried to make sure we overcame that by said, even if it was something said under the water when there was a plunge day, when it was time for Chris Harris to have his swimming races with Owen Farrell. Maybe they said something there, but nothing actually came of it. So I'm sorry we couldn't find any angle there. And you're probably right that the line item mini submarine, was a mini submarine, maybe a bit excessive. But we wanted to know what Warren Gatland could have been saying. And if he was lying about this, if he was making up a fib, a white lie, we could say, a fit lie, then we wanted to make sure we knew why, because it's sometimes we all lie. That's the problem. We all lie. We all do a bit of spying. If you're in sport, you want to know what your opponent's going to do. But, I did talk to Lukhanyo Am did sit down, and what he told me, and this is verbatim, he said, Harry, he said, when you see something, only about 10% of the information comes from the optic nerve, Harry. The other parts of the brain have to deconstruct the signals, And the biggest part of seeing, Harry, is not about receiving the visual images. It's making sense of them, So for each visual input, he told me, it takes a tiny but perceptible amount of time, about 200 milliseconds of a second, for the information to travel along the optic nerves and into the brain to be processed and interpreted. 1/5 of a second is not a trivial span, Harry, he said. So in reality, you're just basing it on your own experience. It's always forecasting for you what the world is and what it can be. We spend our whole lives, Harry, living, in other words, in a world that doesn't quite exist yet. So all I was doing when I was going forward, running on my feet and legs toward the guy that I would traditionally have always marked in my whole life, I was thinking, fuck, I bet the 13 is going to get the ball at some point. Maybe it'll be from a skip. Maybe it'll be from a grubber. Maybe it'll be to Henshaw to me. But I just thought I'm going to sign my name, I'm going to put some shock and awe on him, because that's what we call Jacques Nienaber, is shock Nienaber. And I just thought I'm going to sign my name on him, because that's when Jacques going to love me. And then I get to play more. So, no, look, it's just that the brain is manufacturing things, Harry. And so, I didn't have to know a secret code, whatever it was, whatever they would try to do with their strange calls. Their line-out calls were always very exotic, Harry. But, this is what I was doing, is I was just making sure that instead of cutting in and hitting Dan Bigger, who's always doing the mariachi, or maybe attacking 12, which would leave my 12 high and dry. And I noticed that on the drawing of Warren's accusations, he doesn't put the other guys in the box. He just puts me. It's like he's like picking on me and saying, I was the only defender. And so, I think we were able to sit down with Lukhanyo Am, and we're very impressed with how he saw this. And again, he was saying it's probably just a miscommunication. All the guys in the box said it was miscommunication. Rassie Erasmus has congratulated, Lukhanyo Am on such a brilliant read, and he's obviously past it. He's been spanked, punished, given a hiding, and banned for the video. So he has no incentive, no reason to go back to the story. So we had to understand, why Warren Gatland wants to bring it up right now. So are you interested in our findings about that?
I am. I just want to ask you one question, just to check your credibility and your there might be perception of bias. There were pictures of you floating around with Rassie Erasmus in Hermanus. Just, explain that to me so that I can make sure that I can present this report properly and it's going to be unbiased.
My investigation technique's different from some people, I like to embed myself like a method actor, in a movie. And I wanted to understand what the suspect, what made him tick, to what extent would Rassie go to understand the skip pass. The skip pass is a misunderstood thing. It seems basic because every single team on the planet does it. And if they don't do it, they think about it. So, I wondered, how sensitive was Rassie to this incredible revolutionary method? It's obviously not as important as the bomb squad. It's not as innovative as the two lifted in the line out, throwing to each other over there, the boulder shoulder holder thing. It's probably not quite as revolutionary as, playing Andre Esterhazen as a flank. But the skip pass still, it could catch you sometimes. That ball just doing that little extra skip. And so I wondered about that. But Rassie impressed me in that most of the day, Rassie actually runs around just having fun. I think he's portrayed as much more serious, more diabolical than he really is. As I tracked his movements and I tried to make him not suspicious of me by swimming with him, I got to see that he surfs, he swears a lot. Sometimes he eats a lot, sometimes he doesn't. He likes everyone. He's hugging everyone all the time. And I felt like it was a false picture to think of him as plotting in a basement somewhere around, the giant world map of domination. He seemed more like I don't know, just a regular guy who happens to really like rugby and being around rugby. And I asked Lukhanyo Am, how many times were you given a dossier about the secret skip pass of the Lions that they just invented this year? And he said, no, we didn't have any dossiers. We were playing the PlayStation, and we had this, Bach PlayStation thing. And to me, I learned that it's, the best play is to go to the closest thing. So I learned that if I went farther away to 12, or even farther away to 10, or if I do a leapfrog over to 15, 14, or whatever Duhan van der Merwe was, that it was really bad. So I just hit the guy closest to me. And I had no idea it would be an international incident printed in the Telegraph of London, and that it would be perceived as part of a diabolical, underhanded, shrewd scheme to turn the whole series around. And then Lukhanyo also added one thing to me. He said, well, Harry, we lost the game. And I was like, oh, that's an important point. I wish you had told me that early, because then I could have stopped the investigation and not cost Billy so much money. Wow. Because it's not material.
Talking about costing us money, as you know, I had to sacrifice sevens, and there's a couple of other, initiatives are probably going to have to, go away to pay for this exorbitant investigation. So, giving me the conclusion did you come up with any dirt that can prove to us conclusively that Rassie is in fact an evil bastard, like he was accused, or what was your actual conclusion?
We could not corroborate any of the corroborations that were corroborated by Warren. So it was a failure of corroboration. We're not throwing any stones, but we did make a conclusion about Warren himself. And if you're ready for that, I can reveal that. We cleared Rassie as not having perpetuated any further crimes against the sport of rugby by holding a piece of paper that says "F them up." And we also could find no structure in the Hermanus Hills that had a direct line of sight to Hoërskool Hermanus, and also no tie-in to the audio that would be required to match the utterances of Dan Bigger in the heat of the moment in the 320 skip passes that he hit, that he would know the kind of code that would be used on that day. And Lukhanyo Am also, there was no thing he did that made it seem like he would have not done that same thing in every instance. But we did make an additional finding about Warren Gatland.
Well, let me have it. I mean, we paid for this thing. Let me hear it.
On the balance of probabilities, factoring all variables, understanding the psychology of Warren Gatland, the man from King Country, New Zealand, the hooker, with the same haircut for 45 years, that Warren Gatland is categorically and unmistakably and clearly a doist.
A doist. Well, I don't know what a doist means. What is a doist, Harry? Is that Africanism? What is that?
A charming guy, like a nice guy. Don't worry about it, Billy. We just put this into the press, finalize the print, pump it out there. Don't worry. It's not going to make anyone upset in South Africa. Whatever
it's like a night dude. It's like a night dude or something.
It's like Bongi and Tomka. It's a cultural thing. Yeah, you wouldn't understand.
I get it. So what you're basically telling me is I wasted a lot of money to hear nothing and basically hear that Warren Gatland is not your favorite person.
No, I don't think it's a waste to go through this. It restores faith in the sport. It brings repute instead of disrepute. It also helps us help Warren, because I think he needs some hugs. I think he needs just maybe we should give him a house in Hermanus and say, from World Rugby and say, this is where you live from now on. You can just sit there on the hills and look down on that field where you originated the most amazing tactic in rugby that's ever been discovered. The idea of a spiral pass going from 10 to 13.
Yeah. The skip pass, can you believe it? Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely up there with the bomb squad, everything in terms of innovation. The stealth bomb playing it back in the front, in the forwards and the likes. No, thank you for that. That's enough from Billy Beaumont. Harry, it was fun, but we just made a lot of fun of someone that's actually taken this very serious. Why on earth, after 4 years? I mean, come on, man. What's the guy's story?
Okay, so now I'm just a guy. I'm Harry. I think you're looking at something you and I have talked about a lot, which is we talk about how losses make you learn. And that's true. It can. It doesn't always. Just think of people in your life who have gone through losses and how they could be bitter, how they could be, what's it called? Spiral. They have the same thought over and over. How could this have happened? And they start to make false linkages in their mind. And I think what you're looking at here is the Lions tour is going through. It's been a long time since it wasn't Warren Gatland being the coach of said Lions. So there's nostalgia there and there's a feeling of I'm being left out. But it all comes back to the fact that he lost, that Rassie Erasmus was the better man. He was the superior in this conflict. Both of them went to war. Both of them can be very sarcastic, both very passive aggressive at times. Both of them very sure about their supremacy to the other. And Rassie got him. He got him by the length of a Mornay-stained kick. Sure, but he did. And I think Warren's never come to terms with it. He's living life on his own terms instead of the world's terms. And he needs to get onto how the life is, how the world works, which is there's not some sinister reason. It was actually a loss, and you lost. And just deal with it and stop doing things that will bring the game into disrepute. But I don't think he's able to do it. I think there's something the number of articles he's written that have revived that loss and placed Rassie and South Africa in general in a bad light, suggesting that there was untoward and incorrect ways of winning it is quite surprising, actually. But there's only one option that I can think of, which is he's never accepted the loss as a fair and square loss. He's always tried to feel that there's some other reason underneath the reason. And that's it. That's what we're looking at, is a man getting bitter and not accepting that he's a fine fellow with a great career and he should just, be happy about it. He's getting cartoonish, becoming a caricature of himself.
Just in the interest of fairness, I mean, in Chasing the Sun too, we saw that the Springboks also said that somebody from France was spying on them, and they also had to move indoors. So this is not like it's never happened before. I mean, it's a fact. You mentioned it earlier as well, but just talk to me about that. How prevalent is it really? Not talking about this specific incident of the Lions now, but just in general.
I did an investigation for real in my life about a year ago, and it was actually fascinating. It was about an election fraud allegation. And the loser of the election said that his opponent had cheated in the election, that there was fraud. And the board of elections of this particular place hired me almost on purpose to spend a lot of money because they wanted to kind of call his bluff. And he said, no, there's no need for an investigation. I just want to say it. I just want to say it out there, and I want to publish it, in an editorial, just like what Warren did. And then they said, no, we're going to actually hire someone who's an expert and come in and do it. We rip through it, and just like every other investigation in sort of a, relatively non-corrupt modern democracy, the cheating is equal on both sides. And guess what? It's infinitesimal. It's minuscule, and none of it would ever have changed. In a 300,000 person voting, you have 13 bad things here and 12 bad things there. It's just like rugby reffing. And in the end, so what I'm saying is that all teams would like to know what the other team is doing. And if someone's speaking too loudly at a coffee shop in Wellington, New Zealand, or Auckland, New Zealand, when the Springboks are there, best believe that Tony Brown's going to go, interesting. So matcha latte is the code word, so they're going to run back and try to make sense of it. It's cloak and daggers. It's spy versus spy. It's not a big thing. Rugby is not susceptible to any one call that would change it and become material. I mean, what would it be exactly? A skip pass, like what? It turns out on exit kicks, they often go to the left. It's just not going to change the game. It's 80 minutes of hell. It's physicality. It's 300 collisions. So it's almost like being in physics or in a Masters of Law program. You could have the test before the test. It's not going to help you. You have to write an essay. You have to be a logician. You have to understand the material. It doesn't really matter if you have it beforehand. So I don't think that it's as important, but absolutely, if you looked at 130 years of rugby, have teams wanted to know what the other team's line-out calls are? For sure. Why did Victor Matfield stay up all night trying to watch as many as he could? Because he was trying to learn tendencies. So if the tendency of Dan Bigger was never to go fizz pass across the face to skip, and that was important, then maybe. Fact is, Dan Bigger was kind of a skip passer, and with a rush defense, with a high line, in your face defense, it kind of makes sense if you want to get to the wing. If you want to find Duan, you better get it to 13 quicker, and maybe you don't go 12-13. So it's kind of hard. It doesn't seem like it's material, but bless his heart, I think it's something that Warren wants. I think he's sucking his dummy. He got his thumb on his mouth, and someone needs to change the nappy and tell him to move on.
What's that saying? You always have old man shouting at clouds, There's an old man shouting at clouds quite close to where I'm staying recently, but it's no longer close to where I'm staying. But let's leave that for another day.
Turn the music down.
I tell you what, Belinda let me know yesterday that the moment I turned my back, the DJ went apeshit again. Sorry for my language. So I'm going to have to step it up here. I'm definitely going to have to take steps there. Anyway, Harry, people, please, this was a tongue-in-cheek thing. We're just making fun of something. We're not, no malice intended. Some of the language was a bit strong for you. I'm sorry for that, but it was good fun. Thanks, Harry.
Yeah, we're making fun of everybody.
This is a special investigative episode of the Lucky Rugby Pod, special emergency one. Thanks, Harry. That's a good one. Pretty soon we're going to be lining up some very interesting interviews. You've been putting out your feelers, so people watch out for that. As ever, Lucky Rugby Pod is the place to come to when you want to know what's really going on behind the scenes.